I'm Kristin from Real Simple, here in my own home kitchen, which normally doesn't look as neat as this, making one of the recipes from our Month of Dinners feature. Today I'm making roasted chicken and tomatoes with collard greens. I'm excited about this recipe because everyone in my family likes chicken, which is great, but also making it involves just mixing a few great ingredients together and throwing them in the oven. And what could be easier than that? The first thing I need to do to cook this chicken is turn on the oven. So I'm going to preheat it to 450. And now I've got 8 bone-in chicken thighs. When you go to your grocery store, you see there are chicken thighs that are boneless and there are chicken thighs that are bone-in. Both are wonderful. This recipe just happens to call for bone-in thighs. So you take your 8 thighs, and I've got 2 pints of grape tomatoes, and as gracefully as possible, you just combine them on this baking sheet. Drizzle 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Which doesn't actually seem like a lot of olive oil, but it's really plenty, particularly when you have the skin on the chicken, because the skin's pretty fatty. And then you want half of a teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper. And then I just mix the whole thing up with my hands. I think this must be some primal leftover from childhood pleasure. But I also find it fastest to mix things like this with my hands. And then you just put this right in the oven. This cooks for 30 minutes on 450. While our chicken is cooking, we can make the collard greens. I'm going to start with the onion, which is just a regular white onion, medium-sized. Now, everyone seems to have kind of a different method for peeling an onion. The one that works sort of fastest for me and is therefore most effective because it eliminates tears the most is just to cut it in half like this and then slice it horizontally. And the faster you work without actually cutting yourself, the better your eyes are going to feel. Okay, so we have our onion. So collard greens are really easy to prepare. The worst thing about them is they have this very hard stem. But once you get that out of the way, you can be shortly in business. So I'm just going to cut off the stems. And then what you want to do is cut them into 1-inch strips. And they seem a little tough now, but we're going to saute these. And then they will be tender and delicious. Okay, so the chopping's finished and now we're ready to cook. So I need my big trusty skillet, which I'm going to turn on to medium-high. It's heating up a little bit. I will add a tablespoon of oil. When the oil starts to shimmer a little bit, you know your pan is ready and the oil is hot enough. And that's when you can add your onion. Now with this dish, you really do need to kind of constantly stir the onion for 4 to 6 minutes. You want it to soften a little bit before you add the collard greens. Now these onions look just right. So I'm going to add my collard greens. This is why you need a big skillet, because although they cook down much smaller, they start out kind of big. And to this mixture, I add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We're a very salty family, so I tend to overdo it a little bit on the salt. And a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. You want to cook these collard greens with the onions until the collards are wilted and tender, which is about 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, these collards and onions look great. Now really all I have to do is wait for the chicken to come out of the oven, so it's time for a little break. Well, it's been about 30 minutes. The chicken smells incredible. I've peeked at the tomatoes and they look really good, so I'm going to take the whole thing out of the oven. Now, as you can see, the chicken gets really nicely brown on the top. The colors of this dish are really beautiful, and it couldn't have been easier. To serve it, just take some of the collard onion mixture You know, depending on how much people in your family like collards, you can decide how much to give them. 2 pieces of chicken, because I do have carnivores in my house. Then you have a beautiful, healthy dish that almost felt like it cooked itself.